Greetings, and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast that hasn't finished round one and is already disappointed with the public opinion. I'm your host and Thirsty Mage community manager, David Lloyd, and this week we continue our multi-episode journey to find out which RPG our community feels is the best ever made. But before we get into this week's discussion, if you'd like to have a key role in the decision-making process for this competition, among a host of other benefits, please head on over to patreon.com/thethirstymage to find out more information about becoming a member of our Thirsty Mage video game club. But joining me this week in a debate for the ages is NWR Reviews editor, Jordan Rudick.
So I'm the guy who couldn't wait to play Cyberpunk. I've got a copy that's shipped to me from Walmart, but it's not going to arrive till the middle of next week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. And so I went to EB Games like a sucker and picked up one today. So what I'm hoping to do is I'm going to play a little bit of this one and then trade in this copy or the one from Walmart. And Dave, I know I'd mentioned it to you. I don't know if I'd said it on the podcast, but their EB Games in Canada, at least, has a promotion for their card members. Edge Rewards, I think, is the name of the program, where if you don't like a game, you can play it for 2 or 4 or 7 or 10 days, depending on your membership level. And then I think you can kind of bring it back and say, yeah, I didn't really like this. I wasn't feeling it. And they'll give you store credit you can put towards something else. So I might do that with Cyberpunk when my Walmart copy comes in, see if I can bring this copy back and just put the credit towards something else. There's actually some decent sale. I meant to tell you about this, actually, because there's some decent sales coming up on a couple of their PS5 games. Valhalla is going to be $20 off, so it'll be $59. And I think, what is it?
That didn't take long.
No, it didn't. Well, hey, Watch Dogs was over like half price already. So I keep wanting to call it Phoenix Rising, Immortals Phoenix Rising, whatever.
That was the other Ubisoft.
That one's going to be like $39. Also next Thursday as well, so the 17th. So my plan is to maybe bring in a copy of Cyberpunk, the one I got from them, and maybe parlay that into 2 other games. So fingers crossed, and I'll try to give an update on that next week or the week after, see if my plan ends up working out or not. But yeah, you and I both played a little bit of Cyberpunk today. Still very early, too early to really share any impressions. But yeah, look forward obviously we'll be doing an episode on that in the new year, and maybe we'll share some impressions next week when we start our Demon Souls remake episode.
Well, I think it really goes to show that it doesn't pay to buy an Ubisoft game on day one, I guess. We only have to wait about 2 weeks to get the deep discounts already. It's pretty crazy.
Maybe the problem was releasing 3 big open world games within like
that's right.
a month or less, like 3 weeks of each other, right? You had Watch Dogs, Valhalla, and Phoenix. I keep want to call it Phoenix. Is it Phoenix Rising? I want to call it Gods and Monsters.
It's called Phoenix.
Because Gods and Monsters.
That's its first.
That's the first title, and I think it's as kind of like maybe unoriginal or uninspired as that title is. It's more memorable. So all 3 of those games released in such a short span. But I do want to try those. But
it's called Immortals Phoenix Rising, and they spell Phoenix. They spell Phoenix weird.
Right. Yeah. FENYX, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just call it Immortal. So I'd like to pick up those 2 and just kind of try them out. I got to tell you, after picking up Demon Souls again, I'd beaten it, and then I went back to Watch Dogs and finished that. It's the beginning of the new console generation where I get very excited about trophies. And I'm not like obsessed with like platinuming games or anything like that, or collecting all the trophies, but there is something about like, I've got an hour to kill. I'll go see if I can get a couple of trophies or something like that. So I'll share more of those thoughts next week on the Demon Souls episode. But it has been fun, just kind of going back into games, playing them very casually, and banging out a few trophies when I've got a little bit of time. Like there's something really relaxing and cathartic about that, and it made me think a little bit more about just achievements in games. And I really like the way Sony does it. I wish Nintendo had something like that. I couldn't really get into the Xbox way of doing achievements with the gamer score. I don't know if you have any experience with that or you care about that at all.
Vaguely remember that, but I definitely think that the trophies add a dimension that I enjoy. Like, even in something, I remember like Trails of Cold Steel 4, like even seeing some of the different trophies and thinking like, yeah, this is a good way to just kind of give you that extra motivation to do certain things that maybe you didn't necessarily do all the time. Like, one of the things is, like I never really fished in Trails of Cold Steel, but obviously there'd be trophies, and if I was going for them, like, that would give me motivation to be like, maybe I'll do the fishing then. Yeah. And even and it's funny talking about the trophies in PS5, because I was even trying to get some of the trophies in the bot game there that came with it.
Astro's Playroom, yeah.
Yeah, Astro's Playroom. I just, they're easy enough to get, and it's just like, oh, okay, why not? Go get a couple trophies, kill a few minutes, especially when it takes like 45 minutes to download and process the Cyberpunk game off a disc. So it just gave me something to do for a bit. But
yeah, I'm expecting you to get every platinum trophy now, because especially at least for the digital games that you have, because I know you'll be facing long with your internet speed. You're going to be facing some long downloading times and patches and stuff like that. So I guess while you're waiting, to play the game that you really want to play, you can go back to some old ones, or even the free games from PS Plus or something like that. Bang out a few trophies and kill some time that way. So go ahead. I have two games that I've only ever 100%ed two games. The first one is Batman Arkham Asylum, and the second one is Assassin's Creed 2. I have only platinumed that I can remember, like at least purposefully, one game. It's an RPG, and we've covered on the podcast. You want to guess which it is?
Oh, it has to be PlayStation.
It's on. It was on PlayStation, I think, first, but eventually came to Switch. It would have been on PC first, I suppose, but I ended up playing it. I actually played it on Vita.
Oh, Vita! Oh man, now you just completely threw me off. At first, I was thinking Witcher, but then I'm like, "There's no way you 100%ed Witcher."
Oh God, no! I do not. I don't have the time or wherewithal for platinum like that.
I don't know. Final Fantasy VII?
No, Cosmic Star Heroine.
Oh, okay.
So that's a fairly easy one to get, because I think it only takes maybe 1.5 runs through the game or something like that, or maybe not even multiple runs. You might be able to do everything just going back to a save and maybe I think there's a couple of extra bosses you beat or something like that. So very, very easy platinum if anyone has the game and wants to get a few extra trophies, or they finish it and just want to go back and clean it up. There's they don't take a lot of time to get. I think you can even turn down the difficulty and get through them pretty quickly. So yeah, I really liked. Obviously, we really liked Cosmic Star Heroine, and to get an easy platinum from that game was even more satisfying. So. Yeah, that was me though. But I don't know. It is fun to just see trophies pop again. Like it almost feels like starting over again on a new console, even though they've carried everything over from your PS3 and PS4 and Vita and stuff. But it does feel almost like you're doing it over again on the new console.
Yeah, I can tell you the one thing though, the one bad thing coming out of Demon's Souls is I'm really I think we talked about this we recorded the end of year episode early. And I think I might have mentioned it, I'm becoming like a 4K snob now, because even starting Cyberpunk, or there was another game I can't think of what it was that I had on there that I was playing too, and I was getting upset that it wasn't the same fidelity as Demon's Souls. I think Demon's Souls has already set me down the path of putting my nose up to anything that's not in 4K.
Well, you mentioned also, I think it was you in the Slack chat, about Spider-Man getting an update so that you can run the performance mode but still get the ray tracing, so you can get the fidelity, more of the fidelity that you're looking for, but also the 60K, the 60 frames per second gameplay as well. So it's funny. Like, it seems like maybe a lot of these games that come out early, or maybe the things that PS5 developers are going to be focusing on is really, really taking advantage of the console. And maybe games that came out before, or games that were in development before the console came out, maybe those ones are ones that they'll be doing kind of patches like that. I'm all for that. Anything they can do to really maximize the hardware. It's going to take them obviously a while to figure everything out. So I'm happy to return to games later or play them a little bit late if it means that we're going to have some better versions. I mean, I was thinking about Cyberpunk today, and just like maybe doing one run through the game now and then doing another one when the PS5 kind of the full upgrade package comes out for the PS5. I think that's probably a good way to go for a game that it seems like it's meant to be played multiple times.
It could definitely give a game a second life, like. Even something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think a lot of the people who wanted to play it have played it, but if all of a sudden, they come out with a patch and it's 4K 60 frames per second or something like that, that could spark another run for some people that maybe, like if they can get the patch out early enough in the PS5 life cycle that, when people start looking for a game that they want to, because I don't think it's going to take very long for the PS5 owners now to start looking for games that are going to give them that fidelity experience like Demon's Souls. So anyone that can get out a PS5 upgrade early on, I think, is going to benefit.
I could see them timing, for at least for 7 Remake, I could see them timing that with maybe a PC version release or announcement, or even if they dated the second game or showed off a trailer for the second part. I could see them saying, here's the second part's coming, in January 2022. It feels weird to say that. And then, and at the same time, we've just, here's the PS5 upgrade version, free to all PS4 owners, whatever it is. That'd be pretty cool. So, I guess we should get into the drink discussion because we've got a lot of video game territory to cover.
Yep.
So for me, nothing fancy. So I had one more vitamin water left over. I had the orange one, so I'm having that. It's pretty good. We went on for a little while about vitamin water with Casey the other day. This one might be my favorite one. Like it's a very good orange flavor. It's pretty sweet, but not too sweet. And I'm definitely gonna pick up some more vitamin waters down the road. I think Costco might sell big packs of them. I just don't know if they have only the like 0-calorie ones. I'm not interested in that, so I need to go and see if they have the just the regular kind of 12 or 24 packs or whatever. They're pretty expensive, I think, to buy on their own. I think they're $2 or $3 a bottle. So if I can get them for $1.50 or something per by buying a large pack, I'm kind of interested in doing that over the holidays. So we're due for another Costco trip, so I gotta head out there and see what they have, and hopefully my it's funny, you think about the holidays and all the spending that goes on. Like, as much of the spending on gifts and stuff can also be like spending on food and drinks and desserts and things like that. I was looking at my credit card bill, and a lot of it is getting ready for holiday baking and just all the maybe fancy dinners. It sounds like we're gonna maybe make some food and bring it over to friends and family. We had a couple of friends that just had kids, so we bought some extra food so we can make them some dinners and just try to lighten the load for them over the holidays. Obviously, it's tough when you've got a newborn. So, that's us. But just an orange vitamin water for me. Nothing fancy today.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm a little bit the opposite because tonight I've got a Gainsbourg beer. This one's called Darling, and they call it. It's got a champagne on the front, but it's really just a triple Belgium. But it's 8%, but it feels like a strong 8%. I guess your 8%'s already getting up there, but like you can feel the triple. It has a very strong taste to it. It's kind of a light beer, obviously made in like the Belgian way. But the aftertaste, it kind of gives you a little knock into the nose, the nostrils. So, pretty good though. I'm enjoying it.
I meant to ask you about the you said that someone had reached out about a beer sponsorship or getting their beers tasted and mentioned on the podcast. Where are you at with that? I don't know if I had gotten an update from you.
Well, they tell me. It's funny. Having recorded the end of year special a few days ago, I think our timeline's going to be a little mixed up. But everyone will find out in the final one. So there's this PR company that reached out for, I'm trying to remember the name of them now. Oh, New Holland Brewery in Michigan, and it's on its way as far as I know. The representative, I gave them my address, and she asked me what I wanted, and I said, give me the hard stuff. So I'm hoping to get
the highest percentage you have. That's what we take.
Yeah, she named off a few. So the ones that she had named was Dragon's Milk Stout, Dragon's Milk White, and she goes, if you're a beer nerd, you might like the Fodder Aged Ale, though it's not for the faint of heart. And so, obviously, my first choice was the Fodder Aged Ale.
It sounds like she's speaking your language.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then they also have a bourbon as well. So I don't know if I'll get any of that, but it sounds like I'll get a few different things to try out. So looking forward to that. So
yeah, I'm still working on us getting free Coca-Cola and Pepsi products, but I think that's probably a little bit harder of a get. So
working our way up.
Yes, that's right. We're not big enough yet. So this is the time to leave those 5-star reviews on your podcast app. Help Jordan get free soda for life. That'd be nice.
Yeah. What we'll do this week, though, is have a bit of a summary of last week. So we were attempting to get through the half of the first round. Unfortunately, we had so much to say we couldn't quite get there. So we ended up having gone through 5 matchups, and we had the votes. Votes are all tallied, and we have our winners. So we'll just start off the show with saying who's moving on. So in the first round between Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, we have Chrono Trigger moving on.
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Like I think for a lot of people, it's pretty close, but I think it's very hard to put Chrono Trigger against really so many games especially of that era, and say, this is better than Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is definitely one of the favorites in this contest, and so Final Fantasy VI had a really tall task, I think, and probably put up a valiant fight. I don't know what the final voting tally was, but I think on social media or our Twitter poll, Chrono Trigger had a sizable lead, but I don't think that was the case in other voting portions. I could be wrong about that, but
yeah, it was pretty close. Yeah, I'm not afraid to say that. I think I ended up voting for Final Fantasy VI myself. It might have also been a bit of a knowing that it wasn't going to to get past. I guess rooting for the underdog, but
yeah,
it's hard to turn down any Final Fantasy game. But the our Patreon score, it ended up coming in at 5-2 in that vote, so it was close enough, but.
Yeah, it's definitely like a 1A, 1B situation for Super Nintendo RPGs. Like nothing. Chrono Trigger advancing there doesn't say anything bad about Final Fantasy VI. Nope. So,
and in the second matchup, we had Bravely Default versus Deus Ex. Pronouncing it right today, and Bravely Default came out the victor quite easily. I would say. Quite different games. To go up against each other, and I think kind of the community is more of a JRPG crowd, I think, for the most part, I think. So there was a bit of that, but you also had the recency bias a little bit, but I don't know if Deus Ex had much of a chance going up against Bravely.
Yeah, I think Deus Ex is tough because games have come along since that have vastly improved on what that original game did, I think. You also kind of had to have been around PC gaming, I think, specifically when that game was released. I don't know if there was a console version ever or at the same time. David, you or someone out there can correct me, but Bravely Default, like, not only is the third game in that series launching in just a few months, but it's also I think it's aged better. Like, there isn't really a game that has vastly improved on Bravely Default. Like I guess that's part of it being more recent, but part of it also, and we mentioned this on that episode of it using the 3DS so well. I think that really helps it stand out too. So.
Yep. The original was on PC, but there was a PS2 version.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I can't imagine. I don't know anyone who played that game on PS2.
No, I don't either.
I might know a couple people that played it on PC, and I certainly heard of it and then played the later games. But yeah, Deus Ex had a steep hill in front of it. I think.
And then for our third matchup, we get in Nintendo. It's Pokemon Yellow versus Earthbound, and Pokemon Yellow came out the victor.
Yeah, this one hurts a lot.
This was very close.
I think this is also
very close.
It's very close. It was very close. Yeah. This one was really tough because they're so different, right? Pokemon being so incredibly ubiquitous, but Earthbound really having that cult following, and maybe, they're both kings and queens of nostalgia, right? Like they're both of those games, are totally connected to memories of childhood and games you played growing up. Maybe some of your first RPGs, and I think everyone could. I imagine most people could be happy seeing either one go forward. But I'm really curious to see. I was really curious to see what the winner of that contest would do in the next round. So that remains to be seen.
Yep. Yeah, and it was only on the Patreon, and Pokemon Yellow only won by 1 vote. And then I'm just trying to look up the. Actually, on social media, Earthbound ended up winning.
Right.
Just a little bit came out, but then the other votes, like, I know Casey and I both sided on Pokemon Yellow, so that didn't help. So it just got Pokemon Yellow across the finish line, but. The funniest thing I thought, though, was in the next matchup. I think the most vocal disagreement we had was in the Xenoblade Chronicles matchup, because we had Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 up against each other, and we had a few people who were upset that X was not considered.
Yeah, I think that, obviously the trouble with X is that it's trapped on the Wii U, right? Whereas Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and then Xenoblade Chronicles 2 with Torna, have a very large presence on Switch. Like, just, the matter of fact is fewer people have played Xenoblade X and maybe will ever play that game just because of where it is. So it's tricky. I think it's a recency thing. It's also... I think X does things that those other two games don't do that I really like, but I also think that the story of both 1 and 2 is just better. I think the characters are better. I would say for me it's the world of X that really stands out, and so it's tough. They're all excellent in different ways.
Yeah, and Xenoblade Chronicles 1 ended up being the victor in that one. I wouldn't even necessarily say was too close. I think the majority of people were pretty clear that the first one was better than the second, although I personally have to disagree. But yeah, I don't know. At the same time, I wonder to a certain extent if it has anything to do with which game was played first, because I actually played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 before I played Xenoblade Chronicles 1, so I don't know if that affected my the way I think about it. But I don't know. We talked about it on the show last week, but there's a lot of reasons I think 2 is a stronger game.
Yeah, a tough matchup for sure, but the people have made their voices clear, and so Xenoblade Chronicles moves on, and again we'll see how that one fares. That could be an interesting matchup in the future too.
And the final matchup that we had was Diablo 2 versus World of Warcraft, and by the skin of its teeth, World of Warcraft just snuck by Diablo 2. So. That was another one that was pretty close.
I think we have to announce that in the most surprising turn of events ever, I think Casey voted for Diablo 2. In spite of the fact
that's
that
all he plays.
he plays World of Warcraft, all day every day, and so I think that's the biggest upset is Casey voting for the game he doesn't spend his life playing. So. I voted for World of Warcraft 2. I think it's just a more meaningful, impactful game. Diablo 2. In some ways, its gameplay has been overshadowed or improved on by the third game. And there's a fourth game coming out too, and we'll see how that goes. But the fact that World of Warcraft is still alive and kicking, the fact that they re-released the original version of an MMO in World of Warcraft Classic, I think is just kind of crazy to me that
and
that
doing
is
strong.
such a popular game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really, really brought back the fan base, and so they're almost gonna. It sounds like in order they're gonna bring back all this old content for, I guess, new players to play the game, and that's I think that speaks to its staying power.
So yeah, that's the first round so far, and we're going to continue on in the first round. We're going to start with the games that we didn't get to that we had planned to. In the Western Conference, we got 3 matchups coming up, and then basically, I think what we'll try to do is we'll just see how far we go. We'll get through as many as we can tonight, and if we don't quite get through them all, then we'll have a few left for the Demon Souls episode that we'll be able to talk about. And I even specifically left the From Software titles at the end of the list, so those might be better to talk about anyway on the Demon Souls. But why don't we kick off this week's round robin with Skyrim versus Fallout 3. So I guess Elder Scrolls 5, I should maybe specifically say Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim versus Fallout 3. So it's in some ways it's almost a battle of the Bethesda franchises in a sense that we didn't go with the newest Fallout because I think there's still a bit of controversy or a bit of debate of whether 4 is better than 3. So we kind of decided to go with what we thought was the best of the Fallout so far, and we've got these two going up head to head.
And just like, with Xenoblade X, we're going to have people saying, what about New Vegas, right? Like, how come New Vegas didn't get included in there? And I think it's tough. I think all 3 games have their own merits. Fallout 3 might be it's the kind of that generational leap from the second game to the third game. It reminds me a little bit about what happened with GTA, when GTA moved from GTA 2 to GTA 3, and it entered like the third person open world kind of type game. It really, really revitalized and changed the franchise. From almost like a point of no return kind of thing. So, Fallout 3, very interesting game. Not my personal favorite. I think it is worth talking about the VAT system, which I'll be honest, I get it. It's kind of almost putting turn-based combat into an action game or into a third-person game. And it, for whatever reason, doesn't work out so well for me. I think I definitely prefer the combat of Skyrim. But I know a lot of people who, the percentages, the fact that you can target certain body parts using the VAT system, I think it's really cool and innovative. I just don't personally like it that much, but I respect it. I can understand why people would like that. But for me, in terms of the minute to minute combat, give me Skyrim. I love being able to put up one hand with a fire spell, and then an ice spell in the other hand, or maybe I'm healing myself with my right fist, and using some kind of spell in my left hand. I just love seeing that in front of your face, that first person view. Although I have to admit, I'm one of those people that likes to play Skyrim in third person about half the time. So, call me crazy, but I enjoy that perspective in my Elder Scrolls games. So
that's interesting. I'm a lot different in both respects. Really, Fallout for me is the VAT system. Like that's what draws me there. I love whenever I play. I always try to put as much as my stats into the VAT system because I just love like breaking into a room and then choosing blow the legs off somebody and then take the head off someone else, and that's I just think that's hilarious, and that's what's fun to me about the Fallout series. For me, even like I think Fallout 4, if I was to pick my favorite Fallout, I'd probably go with 4 just because it's the newest version. It does the VAT system well. It has a lot of fun weapons in there, but yeah, that's kind of what I love about the Fallout system. But for Skyrim, it's hard to beat playing as a stealthy archer. When I discovered this ability in Skyrim, I haven't gone off of it since. Like first time I played Skyrim, I was kind of with you. I had a fire spell in like my left hand, and then some kind of weapon to beat people up with in the right hand. And I think I ended up going to like Winterhold was one of the first things I used to do. And then when I discovered the ability to become stealthy and then shoot arrows from the shadows, that completely has dominated all my future playthroughs of Skyrim. And now, like, the first thing I try to do is find the Dark Brotherhood. And so that they both have very unique combat mechanics. I think that's what kind of separates them, because I don't think graphically there's too much of a difference. Like, it's Bethesda, so you've kind of got a very similar look, and I mean the soundtracks are a bit, they're different, because like with Skyrim you've kind of got the throat singing, like very Nordic sounding medieval music, and then Fallout kind of goes with the, I guess, like the 60s kind of nostalgia, or like 60s in the future, I guess, to a certain degree. Story wise, I'd probably have to go with Skyrim. I'd have to give like the benefit to Skyrim on that regard, because I just think Skyrim's a much stronger story. And I think to me, Bethesda does a good job of letting you create your own stories. Like each of the games have so many different ways to win, like, or to get to the end. Like, you know, in Skyrim, you can join up with the Nords, or you can join up with the Empire, or you can do whatever, like join with the Brotherhood, or there's so many different ways to finish the game. And it's the same with Fallout. Like there's different factions that you can join with. I think that does a good job of, like, it gives you the motivation to do different playthroughs, because you could play the game 2 or 3 times, either one really, and have much different experiences depending on like which faction you end up going with. So,
yeah, I think that's what's kind of amazing about both games is that there's, you know, everyone who plays the game is going to have a different experience, right? And whether you kind of want to do the mainline story quests, or you just want to do all the side stuff, or, you know, just I don't know, just run around, you know, stealing things from people and being a jerk. Like I think the overwhelming kind of attribute or you know, accomplishment of the both games is that freedom that they bestow. For me, it's the world, the environment of Skyrim. I've bought the game on so many different platforms. I've played it through multiple times. I know there's, you know, probably hundreds of things I haven't done in that game yet, or hundreds of things I haven't tried. But it's definitely, you know, I'd have to say it's kind of like one of my, if not my only desert island game. Like I feel like even though I have spent so many hours in it, I think I've barely scratched the surface. And to me, that's what really keeps Skyrim almost at the, I think it's a game I think about all the time. Like I think about just starting a new Skyrim playthrough, and I'm like, if time just stopped and, you know, all of their game releases just stopped for a while, I know I'd go back and play Skyrim. You know, it'd be one of those kind of priority replays for me, because I just I think about all the things I haven't done, and it's like, man, this game could feel completely new, you know, a dozen times, and that's really cool.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like when we think about intangibles, I think that's a Bethesda intangible, is that the games that they come up with are just games that you can play forever. Like it's just, like they're just made in such a way that you can enjoy them all the time, and then, you know, you could go back to them years later and play them again. Like I remember I had a couple years gap between playing it on, I guess it would have been PS3, I think would have been the last time I played it, and then it came out on Switch, and just remembering how great it was, like playing it on Switch, like I remembered some of the things, but there was other things I forgot, and then it just reminding me, like, oh yeah, I remember doing this, and this was awesome. Like having just reliving the moment. There's very few games where you could kind of play again and then relive the same feelings that you had, because like now that you've played it, you don't have the same feelings. But it's just with Bethesda games, it just works out that way for me. So
one intangible I do want to shout out is the fact that the Bethesda games, like these open world games, they almost always have just the most hilarious bugs, and not just hilarious, but most frustrating bugs. I remember when Skyrim first came to PS3, it was a disaster. Like everyone had problems with the game. I know I had a copy of it at some point, maybe not at launch. I definitely played it on 360 and then PS3 eventually, and then later Switch. But yeah, there's something to be said for the kind of the legendary status of Bethesda games and their bugs, especially, not so much like Doom, but more these big open world games where there's just maybe so many things going on in the background that the consoles or the whatever is in the game itself just can't handle it. And it just always feels like a part of the experience of playing a Bethesda game is waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like what disastrous bugs are we going to find? Are they going to be funny? Are they going to be depressing? Are they going to make you angry? Like, what is it?
Did you ever get the flying backwards dragons?
Oh, I know I've seen it. I don't know if I ever had it in my game, but I've definitely seen that video. Yeah,
I love that. I had that a few times myself, and it was hilarious.
Yeah, I remember being locked out of quests or not able to talk to certain people for whatever reason. So I had some of those more frustrating ones, I guess, but never anything like that. Was crashing my game or anything like that. Maybe some slowdown or some small performance issues like that. But it's just a funny thing that comes with that territory. And I think Bethesda even kind of leaned into it themselves, with the jokes at E3 or the Game Awards from Pete Hines or whoever. But yeah, I mean, maybe I think we're still kind of like deciding which one we give an edge to, and I think I'm going to give I'll give a clear win, I think, for me to Skyrim. I think that just that world when Skyrim first came out, that world was so huge and so kind of hard to imagine. In the game since, we've mentioned Xenoblade X obviously has a bigger map, Breath of the Wild has a bigger map, but at the time Skyrim felt almost inexplorable or impossible to complete. Like, how can you do everything and see everything in this game in a lifetime? Mm-hmm. And obviously there are people who have done that, but I remember I picked up this guidebook for the game and it's as thick as a dictionary.
Yeah, I have that too.
I'm like, I'm just flipping through this game, this tome of all the quests and characters and people in the game, and I'm just I don't know. I'm always in awe of the size and scope of that game. Even if other games since have bigger maps, I don't know that a game feels as big as Skyrim does.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, like, it's a huge map, but it only takes a few steps to walk into like a thieves' den or to be dense. Attacked by a dragon. Yeah, it's very dense. So I think Fallout's it'll be a tough. It's going to be a tough matchup for Fallout to try to get past Skyrim. I think it's almost kind of reminiscent of the Chrono Trigger Final Fantasy in a way.
A lot of people like Fallout. I know, especially Fallout 3. Yeah, it's going to be close.
So that'll be interesting. For our next matchup, we've got the indie section. So we've got the new hotness in a Supergiant game in Transistor versus the nostalgic Toby Fox developed Undertale. I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup because, both are indies, but both have quite a following. Like, I think with Hades having such success lately, I think a lot of people, if they haven't played Transistor yet, they probably will, just because I know I've already seen people kind of looking at the catalog after having so much fun with Hades. Personally, I think Transistor is the best game they've made. That's just my personal opinion. Hades was great, but I still think Transistor was better, in my opinion.
It doesn't hurt that Transistor and Bastion are always on a steep discount, too. Like, inevitably, someone's going to add this to a wish list on whatever platform and pick it up at a pretty cheap price. And so, definitely with Hades, people are going to add that developer to their to their radar and maybe go back to their back catalog. Mm-hmm. I just want to say quickly, you mentioned Transistor being the new hotness. Funny enough, Undertale actually came out a year later or a year after Transistor. But you're right, though. There's something about the style and the visuals of Transistor compared to the more simplistic visuals of Undertale that really do lend Transistor that kind of futuristic feel.
Mm-hmm. And with Undertale, they've got it's got a huge cult following. And rightly so. Like, Undertale's another game too where you can play multiple times and get multiple different endings and different ways to play the game. Mm-hmm. And they even have, like, when you go back and look into it's one of those games too that plays well on YouTube because there's so much lore to the game, but then there's a lot of randomness to the game itself, in the sense that there's random things can happen in a playthrough that may not happen in another playthrough. Like there's trying to think of who that there's like a professor or something. I'm trying to think of who it is. I'm gonna have to look it up while we're talking about it.
Yeah,
but
you're talking about in the laboratory.
The lab guy, like the guy who
closer to the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of his name. Like, there's certain game, like you could be in a playthrough and not find out about that lab and what was going on in it, because there's like a random. It's a randomized thing inside the game where, like, maybe I can't remember exactly how it works, but there's like doors that don't open or something. There's something that gives you access to it, and
Alphys is his name.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then and then with the endings, like you've got like pacifist runs and all kill runs that give you different endings, and it's a very interesting game in its own right as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I guess for me the combat of Undertale, the combat of both games is very, very interesting. But there's something about Undertale that the way it takes the turn-based style, but adds like a shoot 'em up element to it, right, or a bullet hell element. I think it's so innovative. Like it's almost a perfect combination of those two genres. Transistor's combat is fantastic too. The way it kind of combines turn-based with an action style, and you can play by stopping the action and making decisions, kind of like a tactical game, or you can kind of just you play a little more risky and just go in with guns blazing, or swinging your sword, wherever power-ups or weapon styles you end up leveling up. But very, 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 very tough to call in terms of combat. I really, really like both. What I do think is maybe more memorable about Undertale is the way that you can you can defeat every enemy in the game if you want to, kind of in standard JRPG combat fashion with whatever weapon you have equipped, or you can just talk to them and try to pacify them or persuade them to stop fighting you. And by doing that, you can unlock the pacifist ending of the game, which is quite good, quite memorable. I like that it's kind of got those different ways to solve combat, in addition to also having a very interesting combat style that you have to participate in regardless.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I thought that particular pacifist run is quite unique because, like you said, Toby Fox kind of invented that battle system where where you have that like box, and then there's like the heart within the box, and then you have to avoid the enemy attacks, and having each enemy have like a unique way to attack, and it's like very puzzle mechanic to it, which I think is very neat. And that's I actually ended up I played it later on, a couple years after it come out, so I was aware of the pacifist run and knew that I think like the true ending is through a pacifist run. So I ended up going that way, and personally, I think it plays better in the pacifist run, like using that unique system, like because you get to play that system to its fullest and really get to feel for it. So I would. It's pretty good, but it's so tough because, like you said, with the Transistor, it's with the bullet hell, like the way that they include the RPG mechanics within that kind of isometric bullet hell. It just felt so good, and the way that that she dragged the sword behind her, and the visuals of everything, and I know the narration is kind of like a Super Games trademark, but it felt so like it seemed like to me that it worked perfectly in the way that the game, like I guess it's tough to get into too much specifics without spoiling the story. But it fits so well to have that perfect narration on top of it.
Yeah, obviously it's an incredibly stylish game, as we gushed over it during our Transistor episode. I think the soundtrack is no disrespect to the Transistor soundtrack, which I think is incredibly evocative for that game and suits it really well. But to me, the Undertale soundtrack is an all-timer. That might be a top 5 soundtrack for me for any video game. I listen to it constantly. I love listening to remixes of the Spider theme or Megalomania. Like there's so many memorable soundtrack not even just the soundtrack, but the sound effects in that game too. Like all of the sounds that come from Undertale to me are memorable. I don't know. I just think it's a very, very unique soundtrack, and the fact that kind of Toby Fox did all of this by himself, maybe that's part of an intangible for the game, but just incredible work by him put into this game, and I think the soundtrack, really, really speaks to me personally too.
Yeah, it's. I would definitely consider it intangible. Like when you consider how much unique aspects of this game were, like to have someone do not only the soundtrack but create such a unique combat system to have it do so many different things, like with the traditional RPG or the pacifist run, and then to do all the writing. Like that's one of the other great things about Undertale is that the humor that's invoked in the story and the writing is very well done, and it's really incredible to think that one person did all of those things. Like usually you see like you get a great writer or a great musician or something, and like it's always someone's great at one thing and you bring in people that are great for other things, but to have one person to do all those aspects so well is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the story I think for both games is also so the humor and the writing of Undertale goes against the maybe the sorrowful emotional tale of Transistor. Although Undertale has its emotional bent as well, but I think the voice acting maybe lends Transistor like a gravitas that Undertale doesn't have. Undertale with its visual style. And the way that everything kind of sounds, I think it's difficult to maybe take it as seriously. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think it feels more like a fantasy, I suppose, whereas Transistor feels like maybe a possible glimpse at a dystopian future in a way, right? And the voice acting of I can't remember who does the voice, but he voices the sword carried by the protagonist, Red. It's all-time voice work for sure. I mean, and it's Super Giant Games, Super
Giant Games.
Super Giant Games, like they're obviously well known for having top-notch voice talent in their games that really, really adds so much to the experience. And so, two totally different stories delivered in completely different ways, both very memorable though. Yeah,
and I guess the one thing about Transistor 2 is I think Red just stands out more as a protagonist than the one like I can't remember I'm blanking on the name of the Undertale protagonist, but I mean that might be an indication right there of one being stronger than the other, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like it was almost like in Undertale, it was almost like you were playing the game, but in Transistor was definitely like the Red story, and she came off as a much stronger heroic figure to me, or I don't even know if like heroic is so much, because like you said, it's a very very sorrowful story, and it's basically like her fighting for her life, but kind of going through the experience with her, I think was very impactful. Like, so it's difficult. So Undertale's protagonist is named Frisk. I had to look that up too. But Frisk definitely feels like more of a surrogate for the player. Frequently, I think they use the pronoun you to refer to the main character in Undertale, and so you're meant to feel like as a stand-in for that character. Whereas Transistor, no, like you're very much watching a story take place. You are not really in place of the characters. They have their own kind of thoughts and feelings and actions and history, especially. So, oh, gosh, what a difficult matchup to call. I think I'd give slight edge to Undertale, but I think this is going to be really, really close. Yeah, I don't know. I like even sitting here, I'm not sure who I would vote for either. It's very tough. Mm-hmm. But probably a good time then to move on to the next one, which is this is a couple powerhouses right here. So this is kind of the open world section of our competition. So this is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt versus Horizon Zero Dawn. And oh man, this is huge. Like these are both massive, like great big open worlds. They got beautiful graphics. Oh man, this
it really
one's gonna be tough.
depends. It depends on what style of game you prefer, I think. With Horizon being a little bit more action, stealth oriented,
Yes,
and Witcher being a little bit more kind of traditional, slower action RPG.
more strategic in its fighting, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's tough, right? Because Horizon has that too. Like you can prepare you can prepare the traps, and you need to figure out what
a lot of hiding.
Yeah, a lot of hiding, a lot of stalking your prey. Like you do feel kind of like it's funny, Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, but Horizon Zero Dawn has just as much hunting of those mechanical dinosaurs. I never got a chance to play, unfortunately, the DLC of Horizon Zero Dawn. I want to do that because actually I have the game digitally. And hopefully the DLC goes on sale at some point. But I had played the Witcher 3 DLC, so I've beaten this main story of both games, but spent more time in the Witcher 3's world for sure. I would give the edge graphics wise probably to Horizon Zero Dawn. I think that
I agree.
Being a very, very late exclusive PlayStation game, it was clearly designed for the capabilities of the PS4, and I think it's a really good showcase of what the PS4 can do. Whereas The Witcher 3 being released kind of on many different platforms, there are ways to get that game looking very nice, but I think there's also parts of the game that are very muddy and dark and maybe don't stand out as much visually. Horizon Zero Dawn, I think, constantly from environment to environment, you always have your breath taken away by how it looks. So graphics, I think I would lean a little bit Horizon Zero Dawn, but yeah, Witcher 3 is no slouch there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, especially when you turn on that little headset that she has, and you see like the visual come up, and there you get like really kind of augmented reality, like the colors that are used, and then the detail on like the robots and the environment. Like I just think it stands out over The Witcher 3. I mean, Witcher 3 does, like you said, it looks nice. It's got that medieval setting, but I just think Horizon stands out a bit. I also think Horizon, I would probably give a slight edge to Horizon for the combat mechanics, just because I think they're, like you said, there's a little bit more stealth and precision there, but I just think that the flow is a little bit better. Like sometimes I feel like Witcher can get a bit stiff when you start getting into like the sword fighting and that, whereas in Horizon I just feel like everything flows pretty smoothly. And I think there's a more variety to the way that you can play in Horizon, with the different weapons and the different ways that you can stalk the robots or defeat them, whether it's like using different weapons or setting up traps and stuff. So I'd probably give the slight edge, like you said, for combat on that end.
Yeah, I found, at least when I came back to Witcher 3 just to play the DLC before we did our episode on it with John, I found the combat, like I was just kind of using it as a means to an end. Like I really think the story is where that game really stands out and shines. For me, Witcher 3 combat, I was just, I did whatever I could to get through. I didn't really care much for the sword fighting and the parrying and stuff like that. I used some fire magic, and sometimes I just run around until my fire magic would charge up again and just cast it. But Horizon Zero Dawn, yeah, the combat's really fun. I do think that using the bow and arrow was really satisfying, and like you mentioned, scanning the creatures to find out what their weak points are, and then crafting a particular trap to ensnare them. Very, very satisfying. So, combat, I would definitely lean Horizon here.
Yeah, for Witcher 3 now, I would probably go with Witcher 3 for the soundtrack and the story. I think Witcher 3 benefits from the fact that it was been a novel. I think it always benefits, or it helps the developers when there's already like a fantastic story to base the game on. So I think it already had a bit of a head start there. But yeah, the soundtrack for Witcher it's incredibly memorable to me. Like I can still think of the specific songs in my head, and I guess with Horizon, like I can't even really recall the soundtrack per se. Like it hasn't been that long since I played, but I can't think of any songs in there. And the story was nice, but I don't know if the story itself was really the focus, as more like just the experience of the journey with Aloy. I think it was more about Aloy than a plot or anything. Like The Witcher, like I understand, like Geralt is obviously like a huge protagonist, but there was a very complicated backstory going on at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I think the world and the characters in it in Witcher 3 are fascinating. Like the side quests in that game are some of the most memorable in any video game, especially the Red Baron, that one that you play very early on, is incredibly evocative and emotional and very, very surprising, especially depending on the different ways it can go and the decisions you have to make. So a lot more maybe I want to say agency or autonomy in terms of directing the story in The Witcher 3, and for me that's what kind of pushes it a little bit further ahead than Horizon. But I mean, I think it's Aloy. I mean, I like Aloy as a character. I just don't think any of the other side characters in that game were all that memorable. I liked her story and her journey, and obviously I liked Geralt's as well. But I think there's more kind of like meat to the world and the narratives in it in The Witcher 3.
Yeah,
especially when you consider all the sizable DLC. And just the fact that the game, if you wanted to complete even the main story of The Witcher 3, it's significantly longer than Horizons, and it's all filled with story.
Yeah, well, and then when you consider how impactful like Triss and Yennefer are, like you don't have that same secondary characters, I guess you would say, in Horizon. So it definitely feels more of a solo journey in Horizon, whereas The Witcher has like a ton of characters going on.
For sure.
Yeah. What would you consider the intangibles of these particular games? It's
I mean, maybe I've been talking about it, but maybe I want to say DLC. The fact that both games had sizable content to expand the story, and add hours and hours to the playtime. I heard good things about the Horizon content, the Frozen Wild or Frozen Expanse or whatever it was called. Adding kind of a completely different area and a different environmental theme to it seemed pretty cool. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to play that yet, but for me, it's that Witcher 3 DLC that is dozens of hours long. I played the second one, Blood and Wine, before we did our episode on it, and it just blew me away how the DLC itself could have been a separate game, along the lines of something like Xenoblade Chronicles Torna. So yeah, the fact that both games, were already sizable, really, really well received critically, commercially, and then on top of that had amazing, at least as far as I can tell with Horizon, amazing DLC as well. To me that may be something that stands out for sure about both.
Yeah, like for me, Horizon stood out as one of the most advanced PS4 games. I feel like it's the way that it was designed. It just like if you had to pick something that seemed as next gen as it could be, like that seemed like it was one of the best designed games on the PS4. But I think for Witcher 3, just having such a massive story, like you said, there's so much stuff that you could play the game and miss half of the story, like with all the side quests and the different hunts he goes on, and just the doing his work as the Witcher and that sort of thing. So there's just so much going on, and I think the world is tied together so well that it may, even if you like, you could play the Witcher and you could be kind of irritated with the combat, but the story will keep you playing. And that's kind of the feeling that I had, where it was like I wasn't thrilled with the way that it actually played. Like the horseback riding felt a little stiff, and a lot of the times I'd get into a fight and it felt a little claustrophobic in certain areas. But there was no way I wasn't going through to find out like what happens in the story, because like the pacing is so well done. And then like even if you feel like you're getting too far into the story, the side quests are just so wonderful that it doesn't distract, and you never like lose track of where you are. So I just think the way that the story develops in The Witcher 3 is really the biggest selling point for that game.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think this will come down to, like I said earlier on, what type of game you like. I know people are super excited for the next Horizon game. I am as well.
Yep.
And that's obviously going to come a lot sooner than the next Witcher game, given that we just got Cyberpunk. But
Definitely.
yeah, both very, very strong contenders for this tournament.
Yep. So our next matchup, we're heading back to the east now, and we're going to start off with the Battle of the Atlas Behemoths. And I don't know, I feel like this one is probably going to be pretty one-sided. That's just kind of my early take on it, but it's going to be Persona 5 versus Shin Megami Tensei 4.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for Shin Megami Tensei 4 to stand out from other games on this list, and especially against Persona 5, which is, kind of took the world by storm. And the Persona series seems to have increased in popularity kind of dramatically with every new entry, especially the fifth one. But SMT4 seems to be kind of that cult classic or cult following status, I suppose. Like, I think there are memes or jokes about, real players or real gamers play SMT and more casual players play Persona. And it's because SMT games are so challenging and punishingly difficult. Even at lower difficulties, it can be very tough to get through them. They both kind of make use of the idea of kind of capturing monsters or demons to fight for you. SMT, it feels like a more serious, darker game compared to the Persona games, or tales of like high schoolers and the antics they get into, and half of it is just kind of their interactions with one another. Whereas SMT it's really just dungeon crawling, trying to get through the story, collecting different demons to fight for you, persuading them, I suppose, and just really just trying to survive the brutal challenges of that game. But it's just such a dystopian, dark world in SMT4, or a lot of the SMT games, even 5, the little we've seen of it seems is going to be pretty dark too. It's hard to maybe find a wider audience with the themes like that. Yeah,
like to me, the SMT was always kind of been like the base. Like, I don't know if back to basics is kind of the way to put it, but it's very fundamental in the sense of it's almost like someone playing an earlier versions of Dungeons and Dragons, and then maybe playing some new version of it that makes it shorter and easier to figure out and glitzier and flashier, I guess. Like that's kind of what, to me, Persona 5 is basically they've taken the battle system in SMT, but they put this beautiful, the visuals are absolutely beautiful. The soundtrack is amazing. Like one of the all-time best soundtracks of any RPG.
For sure.
Yeah, and
there's no debating that. Like aesthetically, it's a masterpiece. Right? Yeah. From the sound to the presentation, the style, the menus, they're unlike anything we've seen.
Yeah, and the story is very memorable. The characters are memorable. Like you like in these games, like you can lose track of people pretty quickly, like when you have that many, but all of the characters in Persona 5, like you remember, they all have their own personalities. They're all very memorable. Even if Haru comes in pretty late in the game, but even she has her fan base. Like there's people who love her, but even though like you don't really get as much of a chance to get to know her. But yeah, it's Persona 5 is going to be one of these games. Like, I guess I don't want to tip my hat to say they're going to squash SMT, but Persona 5 to me is one of those games that could probably go pretty deep in the competition.
What I think will be interesting, I mean, we're planning to do an SMT4 episode in the new year, hopefully earlier rather than later. And I wonder if our opinions will change. I think it'll be your first time playing through that game, David, or you've already played through you've played through 4 before.
It'll be my first time to play 4. I feel like I've played like every other SMT, but not.
Yeah,
and I even own it, which is weird. Sorry?
Did you play 4? Did you play 4 Apocalypse?
No, I haven't played either of them. I think I own them both too.
Yeah, so I know I downloaded 4 recently, so we'll have to get into that at some point. I really like the combat in both games. There's something about the simplicity of the way the combat works in SMT4 that I really like. I think I like the challenge of that game a little bit more than the way the difficulty goes up in Persona 5. Like SMT4 is hard from the get-go. Like there's not really any point in that game where you're gonna feel overpowered. Maybe you pick up some powerful demons along the way, or you combine them and you get some strong ones. But you're always held back by something. Like maybe you can't have a demon over a certain level or something like that. I think exploring the environments, they do look kind of similar. I think about the park areas and the tunnels in SMT4. It's easy to get lost and maybe not know exactly where to go with that world map. The world map is almost as much a puzzle as it is a place to explore, trying to figure out how to navigate it effectively. I have to admit, I can't think of really any music from SMT4 that is all that memorable. I'm sure it's fine, but it just does not, I don't think it stacks up against the soundtrack of Persona 5, which, like you said, that's another all-timer for sure. Yeah. The story and characters as well. Like SMT4, I think the story is, which it might be similar in a lot of SMT games, which is basically about, morality and religion and law and order and trying to figure out, kind of which path you want to align yourself with, and inevitably probably overthrowing the god or gods of whatever world you're in. And I think that the story takes a back seat to just the difficulty of the combat and the satisfaction of kind of collecting the different demons. So at least that's kind of my experience with it. I don't really pay attention too much to the story of SMT, the SMT games that I've played, whereas Persona, I'm definitely more invested in the story.
Yeah, that's been my experience with SMT. Is it's more about the dungeon crawling and the demon gathering than the story per se. Like that's how I felt with like Strange Journey and Digital Devil
Summoner.
Yeah. I always get tongue tied. So that's kind of been my thing. Is when I play an SMT, I'm doing it for the strategy. Like it's all about the building up with the demons and stuff. Whereas Persona 5, it has that elements to it, but you don't really need to get all that detailed in the crafting of the demons to advance. Like, it kind of naturally progresses that way. Like, they're obviously like you can if you want to. And in my latest playthrough, like when I played Persona 5 Royale, is definitely the much better version of Persona 5. And when I played the Royal, I really got into like getting the higher level demons, like collecting the lesser ones and building them up. Yeah. And so you could definitely get that same experience, but I just don't feel like it's the focal point of Persona 5. So it kind of comes down to, if you're very much focused on the combat, then I guess SMT is probably more your style.
For an intangible, I'll throw out that I like the portability of SMT. I love how they kind of make use of, especially the dual screen nature of DS and 3DS, wherever you were playing these games. I like that, you can kind of see the map, or you can see the different stats, HP, MP, whatever things you need to look at when you're playing the game. I think these games really lend themselves to portable play. Frankly, I think Persona 5 might as well, but we've yet to see a portable version of that game. I don't know if we ever will, but that's the kind of thing I'm maybe most curious about with SMT 5 coming to Switch, and SMT Nocturne also coming next year. How they're going to hold up on Switch? Are they going to SMT 5 especially, like is this going to be a game that, looks better playing handheld, or how's it going to be on the TV? It's obviously been a long time since they announced it, and they've been working on it. So hopefully we get more news about that soon. But I really like the SMT games. I'm always excited for the new ones, but I think it's definitely more niche series, especially as it's kind of I feel like as Persona has become more popular, it's almost prevented in a way SMT from becoming popular because they're so different.
Yeah, and Persona 5 holds one of the first time I played Persona 5. The way the game ended for me is one of the most memorable in my life, because just the way that it ended up playing out. So it's so few times where you get into the situation where you've been beaten down, there's barely anything left, and you hit that button knowing that this is the final time you're going to be able to hit the boss, and then it actually working that you beat the game with like 2 health points left, only the one character. Like the relief that flooded my body when I won that, it just took me right over. And I guess the other intangible was for that game is, like, I played through it 3 times now, and the just being able to, like, trying to figure out the relationship mechanics in that game, I think, are pretty neat. Like, trying to max out everyone. Like in Royal, I had like a schedule set up, like on a piece of paper, trying to figure out, like, okay, this character I can do Tuesdays, this one I can do Wednesdays, and trying to max everyone out by the end of the game to get like the best ending in that. That to me, like, there's very few games that can convince me or motivate me to do something like that on paper beforehand. And it's tough. Persona 5, I have a lot of affinity for that title.
I imagine it's going to run away with this, and I'm going to give it the clear edge. But I do want to see how our opinions change after going through SMT4 again. And maybe it looks like we're going to be playing a lot of SMT next year regardless, and not a lot of Persona. So maybe, like I said, maybe we'll be more skewing more SMT next year as a result.
Yep. So I'm looking at the clock, and I'm looking at the next matchup, and I'm thinking this might be it, because I could go for hours on this next matchup. This
we could have an episode dedicated to the next set of games. So
yeah. And we've had episodes for these specific games. So this is the one I was looking forward to. The Nihon Falcom. This is Trails in the Sky versus Trails of Cold Steel 3. Before we get into it, I do want to point out that we have a very Nihon Falcom crowd on Discord, and they all gave me grief for not picking the second chapter of Trails in the Sky. And for me, I only just started the second chapter. I'm only like an hour in. So I can't say whether it's going to end up being stronger than the first one, but it's tough to imagine something better than the first one. Like, these are absolutely incredible games to me, and the fact that I've only discovered these in 2020 makes me sad.
Yeah, I think that part of that is just the kind of the way they've been localized or or released in the West. It's certainly not your fault for just discovering them now. Like they've been kind of on different platforms and different
licensing
kind of
hell.
odd timings. Licensing, they're both trapped in all the Legend of Heroes games are kind of trapped in licensing hell still. Yeah. I think Trails in the Sky is incredibly charming. I think that the 2 main protagonists, Joshua and Estelle, their relationship, their banter, the writing of those characters is just incredible. There's nothing. I don't know. It makes me just happy to think about Trails in the Sky and how kind of charming and. I don't know. It's not a fantasy, but it just feels so whimsical, that world. Even though the combat and maybe the situations they're dealing with are serious, but the perspective, that kind of that almost isometric perspective of the game, the top down view that you get as you're exploring the towns, and the music and just the small villages and things, like it all feels so quaint compared to the kind of the scale of Trails of Cold Steel 3. Like I've only played Trails in the Sky the first chapter. I obviously want to play the other ones, but I almost don't want to, and not to say this would happen, but I don't want to sully my memory or kind of change my memory of the first game and the characters in that world. Like it's kind of perfectly kind of crystallized for me in my memory, and I almost want to keep it like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas Trails of Cold Steel, like obviously, I'm very much looking forward to the fourth one. You haven't stopped talking about the fourth one since you started playing it. That world is much bigger. There's so many characters. There's so many things to keep in mind when you're playing that game. The scale of it is much more massive than the first Trails game, or Trails in the Sky game, I should say.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things is that like Trails in the Sky was a PS Vita game, so it's got a very retro or old style feel to it. Like the graphics obviously don't hold up to Trails of Cold Steel 3. I would even like Trails of Cold Steel 3, like graphically, it isn't really a powerhouse per se. Like it's to a certain degree almost like a PS2 game. I know people complained about the graphics. To me, they're exactly what I want them to be, in the sense that it allows the developer not to waste time with the graphics. Like they do a good enough job that like this is all I need. Like that they don't need to go further. Like that this isn't why I'm playing their games. Like I'm not playing them for the graphical fidelity. This is what I want. I totally agree with the feeling of Trails in the Sky. That whole world like it almost feels like a paradise where there's just like a few things going wrong. Like
you could see yourself living there and being very happy and cozy, just working in an Orbital factory or something like that, or working in a shop there. Like it just feels very, very down home and cozy and kind of small, but in a comfortable way.
Yeah, like and the just the fact that they have them like walking to the different areas, like starting off in Roland, where it's this small village where like everybody knows everybody, and you can even see it like the kids there's like the little kids that give Estelle a hard time, and everyone, like even like the mayor, they know the mayor, they just walk up to the mayor like, hey mayor, this very small town feeling. And then as they get to the bigger places, like it's still, the feeling is still there, even though they don't, like they're strangers in the new places. Like they go to Beauce and meet new people, and I mean, like, and the characters themselves, like, I like you said, I love Estelle and Joshua, but like Oliver, like he's amazing.
Yeah, Olivia, he's great.
Yeah, like he's incredible. And then and Sherazard, like, and the fact that like each chapter features different new companions that you meet. Yeah, it's just it's such a wonderful story, and it's very warm the entire time. Whereas the difference with I would say there's a very similar feeling in Trails of Cold Steel 3, but there's a little bit more tension, I guess would be the way to put it, I suppose.
Absolutely, yes, definitely,
yeah. Like I don't feel the same tension in Trails in the Sky, but I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. It's just a different thing, I guess. And like
the concerns of the characters in the world in Trails of Cold Steel 3, they feel like they're happening on a larger scale. They might not even be, but just the way the game approaches it, the writing, the way the story plays out, and maybe the music especially, there are more moments that produce anxiety or concern for the world and its characters, I feel like. Whereas Trails in the Sky, it does feel like it's a search for, it's like a journey for the characters and a search for themselves, search for Estelle's father, and they're kind of just trying to discover things. Whereas Trails of Cold Steel 3 is more like protecting the school, protecting the world. You sense the political conflict of the different territories bubbling over, right? That's kind of happening the whole time. And so there's constantly a sense of kind of like this ominous presence, I suppose, even if it's not a person, it's just this feeling.
Yeah, and then even with Trails of the Sky, like Estelle and Joshua are definitely the focal points. Like, so it's a much more intimate feeling. Whereas when you're with Trails of Cold Steel 3, like I think Reen Schwarzer is a terrific protagonist. Like I really enjoy the character. I love, like, he's very I don't know, like a Clark Kent, I guess, like a very like stand-up guy who's always trying to do the right thing, but then always very awkward. Like is the way that he interacts with some of the people is kind of like comically awkward. But then the new Class 7, and this is kind of why I went with 3, is that like I love the new Class 7. Like those characters very stand out a lot for me. Like I love Yuna. I think she's a very standout character in 3 and 4, and so I really like that character. But the interaction, like having him as the teacher and then having the 5 interact with each other, I just think they do a very good job of maintaining, like giving everyone their time on screen and feeling like everyone is involved, and then on top of that still bringing in all of these other people from Reen's life, and having them interact, and you get a taste of them in each chapter, and building up to, like, obviously when you get to 4, like you see them all the time, but I just think the writing in both games is absolutely fantastic.
It is. I think the combat is too. And we haven't really touched on this too much, but I think that I like that the changes that Cold Steel 3 does. It makes it a little bit more complicated. It adds more strategy to it. Yeah. But obviously, it started with Trails in the Sky, like what they were doing with kind of charging up the CP meter, then using your super attacks, and having to position yourself and use attacks that hit within a certain range or a radius. Like all of that obviously started in one place. I think it's only gotten better since. Yeah. But I really, really enjoy what both are doing. If you think of Trails in the Sky as being a little bit simpler, maybe a little more accessible, and Trails of Cold Steel 3 being a little bit maybe better suited to veterans of the series, given the additions that they've made to it, but fantastic in both cases.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I just feel like they've perfected the system with each subsequent release. And I find on the PS4 having even like the arena part of it, I think works better. And then having there's just that more strategy with like the combat links. You know, that's definitely a part of the strategy, and you can get into the higher difficulties so that you can really get down into the nitty gritty into these combat systems. And I would personally, I think the Trails of Cold Steel, or like the Legend of Heroes combat system, like I think at this point it's the best turn-based combat system in gaming right now.
Yeah. We're both head over heels for these games, so you'll have no disagreement from me. It will be interesting to see where our patrons' preferences lie, and then on social media as well. I am curious to see those numbers, but I hate to pick against Trails in the Sky, but I'm probably leaning towards Cold Steel 3.
Yeah, so it's tough. Like the unfortunate thing is, I guess it comes down to like the new features versus kind of that nostalgic feel, because like you said, Trails in the Sky is kind of where it started, and so if you kind of have that nostalgia for that old system or the environment, or maybe even just Liberl, maybe you enjoy Liberl better than Erebonia, I guess, or then maybe you kind of go more back towards the Trails of the Sky. I could definitely say that. So the first time I played Trails in the Sky, I played it on Vita, but then I've since bought it on Steam, and it's definitely much better on a big screen TV. It's just a little bit easier to use. Like I'm using a PS4 controller on my PC. So it feels very nice to go through everything. The second playthrough, I definitely understood the combat system much better than the first time. So I definitely had a better feel for it the second time around. And then even doing all, like this time I did all the side quests and stuff. Whereas I don't think I did as much of the side quests in Cold Steel 3, because that was a review game for me at the time. So I haven't been able to go back to it yet. It's tough for me too. Like I even sitting here thinking, like, I'm not sure which one to go with either. Like there's so much good things on either side. Like even the soundtracks, it's tough to say one or the other either, because like they both, I don't know if they have very pleasant soundtracks, I think, is probably the way I would put it. I don't know if I would, bring them up on Spotify and listen to them like I would something like a Persona 5 or a Final Fantasy or something like that. But that I still like. They are still memorable to me, though.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think that they fit the game really well when you're playing it. I just don't know how much I want to listen to those soundtracks outside of the games. They're perfectly suited to the kind of maybe a more laid back worlds and style of those two RPGs, as opposed to something more, dramatic or bombastic. I don't think those these two games really have that. It's much more subdued, laid back, typical JRPG soundtracks that are good, but maybe just not super memorable.
Yeah, and it's also interesting too that so I played Trails of Cold Steel 3 on Switch, which is kind of like a Vita handheld. So I kind of had a very similar experience between like Trails in the Sky and Cold Steel 3, whereas on like Cold Steel 4 I played on the PS4, so it kind of closer in with my second playthrough of Trails in the Sky on the PC. So it's I definitely like it better on the bigger screen in either case. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to playing Cold Steel 3 again. It's even though I own it on Switch, I've asked for the PS4 version on because I'd like to start from the beginning of Cold Steel, go from Cold Steel 1 on PS4 all the way through to Cold Steel 4, so that I can like transfer my saves along the way.
Yeah, I think that's just going to be you and Casey next year doing 4 episodes back to back, where you talk about Cold Steel, the series, and then Casey's just doing WoW every week, and I'll take a little vacation during that time period of it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting 2021 because you
might not even have time for these games. I know that's your plan right now, but we don't even know what's coming for PS5 next year. So.
Well, that's the crazy thing is like we got SMT4 that we wanted to do, SMT5. I've got a bunch of Nihon Falcom. And then whatever the PS5 throws at us, So it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, for sure. So we were able to get through 5 matchups today. We'd originally there's 5 more to go. So still a lot more gaming discussion to talk about, comparisons between classic games to go over. But we'll save that for another day. We want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you're kind of enjoying this journey we're taking to discover the best RPG, and hear all of your input on Twitter and to our patrons. Thank you for voting in the polls for these games. If you haven't already, you can check out our Patreon, www.patreon.com/thethirstymage. We'd love to have you sign up. You can participate in the Discord, help guide the show, and even get games to review and to talk about on your own. The email address for the podcast, david@thethirstymage.com. Please send us game suggestions, things you want to talk about, themes, games you want to hear us play or do deep dives on, even things maybe we covered a little bit, but you want to hear a little bit more detail about them. We can revisit things from the past too. But we need your suggestions. We're hoping to hear from more of our audience out there to help kind of tailor some of the content to what you want to hear for the new year. Obviously, we have some ideas that we're going to be covering, a lot of the big latest releases, Bravely Default 2. We'll have an episode on Cyberpunk. We're doing Demon Souls next week. So you'll still get all of that, but we still want to hear where, how you want to direct the podcast a little bit is interesting to us. You can find David on Twitter @FilteredGamer, and you can find me @Wristman64. Give us a follow. You'll be sharing our thoughts on things like the Game Awards or reviews that we're doing, or just kind of interacting with people talking about games and all the things we're interested in them. Especially sharing thoughts on PS5, which we're both kind of enamored with right now. Maybe some early impressions of Cyberpunk coming soon too on social media before we have our full episode on the game. But that'll do it for this week, David. I think we covered everything.
I think so.
Right on. So, yeah, fun to look at another 10 games, 5 very tight contests, and to reveal the games that are moving forward. So just to recap, that's Chrono Trigger, Bravely Default, Pokemon Yellow, Xenoblade Chronicles, and World of Warcraft are moving on to the next round to face... we don't know yet. We're going to find out soon, but we'll have an update on that in the coming weeks. So... that'll do it. Thanks everybody for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review if you can, and we will see you next week for a Demon's Souls remake episode. Goodbye.
Bye.